The House Committee on Justice will launch a motu proprio inquiry into the United States extradition request for detained pastor Apollo Quiboloy. Akbayan Representative Percy Sendanya said the probe aims to ensure transparency, fairness, and adherence to international obligations. The inquiry will call on government agencies to clarify the extradition process for Quiboloy, who faces U.S. charges including sex trafficking, conspiracy, and immigration fraud. Committee Chair Representative Gerville Luistro noted that existing laws remain unclear when an extraditee has pending local cases and the timeline of the U.S. request is still vague. Joining us now to talk more about this development, we have on the show Batangas 2nd District Representative Gerville Luistro. Magandang umaga po sa inyo, Congresswoman.
Good morning and thank you for having me here in Morning Matters.
Oo, kayo po ay mukhang busy-busy pero maraming salamat po sa inyong oras at sa pagkakataon. Na unang-una ho, alam po natin pagdating sa extradition request, ito po ay dumadaan sa DFA at pati na rin po sa DOJ. Can you explain why the House wants to have a motu proprio inquiry into this extradition request?
First of all, it is the prerogative ng member of the House of Representatives or any private citizen to push for a motu proprio inquiry in aid of legislation. At wag po natin kakalimutan ang mandato ng lehislatura ay gumawa ng batas o pagandahin, paigtingin ang ating mga existing na batas. Kahapon po sa ating discussion during our first meeting, we raised the letter that was sent to us, the Committee on Justice, by the Honorable Congressman Sendanya, na humihiling po na mag-conduct ng isang inquiry in aid of legislation patungkol sa extradition ni Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy. Meron pong report that the United States is requesting for his extradition. At ito po ay nagmula sa ating Philippine Ambassador to U.S., Ambassador Babes Romualdez. No? At kaugnay po nito, tinalakay po kahapon whether or not kailangan ba nating magkaroon ng inquiry in aid of legislation. At doon po sa ating pagpapaliwanag at pagpapalitan ng opinyon at komento, lumalabas na marami pong kakulangan or may mga malalabo sa probisyon ng batas. Particular po dito, ang mismong Extradition Treaty between the United States government and the Philippine government at ang mismong Philippine Extradition Treaty, Law, which is PD number 1069 na naipasa po panahon pa ng ating dating Pangulong Marcos Sr. One of this, ang pinaka-distinct po dito, na hindi pa na-encounter ng Philippines in the past. Ito pong si Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy ay mayroon ding kasong hinaharap dito sa Pilipinas. And the purpose of the extradition to U.S. is because may haharapin din siyang kaso doon sa Pilipinas. To be specific, ito po ay sex trafficking. No? So the main issue here is, pwede po ba na ang isang residente ng bansa facing charges here in the Philippines ay ma-extradite sa Amerika para humarap din sa panibagong kaso na ginawa naman doon sa isang bansa. Well, based on the treaty, maliwanag po, pwede. However, there are two options that the Philippine government must consider. Kapag po na-grant na ang extradition or petition for extradition, the Philippine government has to choose whether it is temporary surrender or deferred surrender. Kapag sinabi po nating temporary surrender, it means kahit mayroon pong hinaharap na kaso dito sa ating bansa, pwede po nating i-extradite siya sa Amerika upang harapin ang kanyang mga kaso doon. At pag sinabi naman po natin deferred surrender, tatapusin muna ang kaso dito sa Pilipinas and even the service of sentence bago po siya i-extradite or isurrender sa ibang bansa. This is just one among the several ambiguities and insufficiencies na nakikita po natin doon sa mga existing laws. To be specific, the Extradition Treaty and the Philippine Extradition Law. At ito po ang dahilan kung bakit minarapat ng Committee on Justice, partikular na mga miyembro nito, na magsagawa ng motu proprio inquiry in aid of legislation. As I have said last time, ang pangyayari po tungkol kay Pastor Apollo Quiboloy is just incidental. What is primary is for us to respond to our legislative mandate, and that is to revisit the laws and to improve if the same is necessary.
Okay, doon po sa sinasabi po ninyo na options, no, meron po tayong temporary at deferred surrender. Does the law say anything about the guidelines of what would entail one or the other? Because, for example, in the ICC case, right, our Secretary of Justice has already said that the ICC would be in the best position to hear the case on the drug war kasi dito mismo kulang tayo ng ebidensya. Is that indicated in the law or pati yun po ay kulang?
There are no details with respect to how the temporary or the deferred surrender will be facilitated. Ang number one question nga po kahapon, who will exercise the authority to choose between these two options? Sino ba ang may kapangyarihang pumili kung ang atin bang isasagawa ay temporary surrender or deferred surrender? Pagaman, maliwanag po sa ating extradition treaty na ang meron pong authority na maghain ng petition for extradition ay ang Secretary of Justice through the Chief State Counsel. Kaya lang po, silent po ang batas. Pagdating po sa sino ang mag-exercise ng authority in choosing between temporary surrender or deferred surrender. So this is one of the insufficiencies or perhaps ambiguities gusto po sa sitahin ng Committee on Justice upang maging maayos at mas maging responsive ang atin dito sa bansa.
Okay. I think there are two angles to this. No? One is that the diplomatic ties between the country requesting for extradition and the host country, the home country, at meron naman po sa kabilang dulo yung dispensation of justice. Ano sa tingin nyo yung tingin nyo dapat magiging pinaka-priority po rito? I mean, given the whole situation, we know that this case is very political as well, right? But on the other hand, pag titignan niyo po yung mga kaso ni Pastor Quiboloy, saan po kaya mas mabigat? He is charged here in the Philippines with qualified human trafficking and sexual abuse, but nauna po yung nasa Estados Unidos na conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking by force, fraud, coercion, sex trafficking of children, and bulk cash smuggling. Do you think, ano po ang reasonable po dito? I mean, in your opinion, na maging pamantayan?
Well, in my opinion, Gretchen, parehas sila mahalaga. It is important that we try him here because that is an exercise of our sovereignty. At may mga tao ditong nabiktima or biktima ng mga kasong isinampal laban sa kanya. However, we have to consider also na meron tayong treaty obligation sa bansang United States. No? And by treaty, it means it is obligatory on our part na tuparin ang ating tungkulin sa ilalim ng ating treaty. No? I wish to add also, Gretchen, ang complainant po doon sa United States mostly ay Filipino din. And we have to consider also almost the same nature ang kanila pong kaso. That is sex trafficking, human trafficking, no? Although the way I see it, I went over the list of cases that he is facing in United States. Mukhang mas marami siyang kaso sa US kumpara dito sa atin. Kasi you mentioned already, Merong fraud marriage, merong bulk cash smuggling, and other similar cases other than the human trafficking and the sex trafficking. So, parehas sila mahalaga, Gretchen, and I believe this is the reason why in the treaty, in-incorporate itong dalawang options, the temporary surrender and the deferred surrender. That is in order to give way to both countries to conclude the trial of both cases which are being faced by the same extraditee.
You're correct, no, that this case and the decisions around it have a bigger effect, and it does not exist in isolation. In fact, it may set a precedence as to how the Philippine requests get received by the United States. Kung babalik na rin po natin yung equation, sino po ang iimbitahan po natin dito sa inquiry na ito to be able to give their sides and to weigh in?
Certainly, no? Kakailanganin natin sa investigation ang expertise, of course, ng Department of Foreign Affairs, ng Department of Justice, including the Office of the Legal Department headed by the Chief State Counsel. Kakailanganin din po natin dito ang Office of the Solicitor General, and perhaps the National Security Council and the Philippine National Police. Initially, ito yung nakikita kong mga agencies na kailangan nating makasama sa pag-aaral ng batas so we can improve our extradition law.
Okay. Magiging malaking konsiderasyon din po kaya yung mga sentimiento ng mga biktima dito na nililitis at in their protection and where they feel most comfortable having their cases heard?
What we need to consider, Gretchen, no? May sentiments yung mga victims na naririto. In the same way, may sentiments din yung mga victims na nandoon sa United States. At gusto kong ulitin, most of the complainants in the United States are also Filipinos, no? Kaya kailangan nating pag-aralan ito mabuti so we can administer justice hindi lamang dito sa Pilipinas, maging sa ating mga kababayan abroad. I just wish to reiterate, Gretchen, no? Nagkataon lang na si Pastor Apollo Quiboloy ito, but what is really apparent, matanda na po yung batas, 1977, passed by President Marcos Sr. As a matter of fact, mas nauna pa to kesa sa treaty between U.S. government and the Philippine government, which was executed back in 1994. Maliwanag po kahapon sa ating pag-aaral, maraming insufficiencies, maraming ambiguities, and the Congress, through Committee on Justice of the House of Representatives, need to respond to our legislative mandate, and that is to revisit and improve the existing laws on extradition.
Kayo po ba ay nagkaroon na ng kopya nitong extradition request?
Wala pa po tayong nare-receive, and we wanted to verify as well kung meron na nga bang request ang US government. But as I have said, Gretchen, incidental na lang to, no? What is important, we were able to establish yesterday na maraming ambiguities, maraming insufficiencies, and there is a need to revisit and improve the same.
And speaking of investigations, I want to go to something else. Of course, you are a congresswoman from Batangas, and we do know that another congressman from your province, Leandro Leviste, has voiced out on bribery and these flood control projects. Kayo po ba ay meron din na pong naranasang ganun in your district, in the 2nd District?
Wala pa po tayong nararanasan ganyan, Gretchen, no? At sana po wag nating maranasan yan. Because we have to acknowledge as well na bagaman meron pong mga kawani ng pamahalaan na nasasangkot sa mga anomalies like itong mga bribery na naranasan ni Congressman Leandro Leviste, no? We have to consider as well na sila po'y partners natin in delivering service sa ating pamahalaan. Kaya sana naman ay wala nang kasunod itong pangyayaring ito kay Congressman Leandro Leviste. And of course, we commend the action of our colleague in the House of Representatives. Siyempre, kapatid at kababayan ko pa siya mula sa lalawigan ng Batangas. I commend your courage in coming out to the open and exposing this illegal action of the district engineer of the first district of the province of Batangas.
Well, Leandro himself said that some other congressmen may be implicated here. That's why he's calling for the suspect to become a state witness. Would you have the same observation of the yung pareho pong kalakaran? Kayo rin po ba kung hindi po sa inyong karanasan, naririnig po ninyo na nangyayari po sa iba?
Gretchen, I can only speak for my district, no? I can only speak for my district. And we have to understand as well, wala naman po sa trabaho ng congressman ang mag-implement ng batas, ang mag-implement ng projects. We only request, we only assist in facilitating the request of our constituents. Nakikipag-usap po tayo sa DPWH for the possibility na baka yung hinaing ng ating mga constituents ay makonsider for a possible funding. Things like that, no? Pero hanggang dun lang po ang kayang gawin ng mga congressman. Hindi po kami pwedeng makialam sa allocation. Hindi po kami pwedeng makialam, lalo na sa implementation. Sana walang nangyayaring ganyan sa ibang distrito ng lalawigan ng Batangas. But as far as I am concerned, to the best of my knowledge, wala pong ganyang kalakaran sa ikalawang distrito ng lalawigan ng Batangas.
But congressmen have complete oversight over the budgets. Am I correct?
Yes,
kayo po ang nagtutulak niya.
Yeah. Yes. I understand there is an oversight function of the Committee on Appropriations of the House of Representatives pagdating sa implementation ng ating budget. But we have to understand, Gretchen, this is the entire General Appropriations Act, no? Tama lang na kung kaya pa magbisita at mag-inspect ng congressman, and we will be considering to do that as well, no? Pero para tutukan, to completely scrutinize each and every project, I think it will be compromising already the function and mandate of the legislative branch.
Oo, ibig sabihin wala na pong debate na nangyayari. Kung wari, meron pong request na inihatid sa inyo, hindi niyo na po baga parang, kailangan ba talaga ito? Wala bang ganong mga usapan in terms of like allocation of funding?
Well, ako sa akin, no, I can ask the requesting party, meron bang site? Kailangan ba ito ng mga tao? What is the purpose of your request? Things like that. Minsan ang makikiusap sa'yo, barangay captain. At yun namang lugar na kung saan pagtatayuan ng mga proyektong ito ay nakikita mo na rin sa pag-ikot mo sa distrito. So I don't see any irregularity pagdating dun sa aming distrito. I just don't know about the things which may not be within my knowledge anymore because we do not take part in the implementation of the project.
It seems though that Congress is taking a hit from this flood control investigation, flood control probe. Marami po nagsasabi na hindi dapat ma-exempt ang mga kongresista. Paano po kaya? I mean, what do we do with the erosion of trust in Congress? What can the Congress do about it?
Alam mo, Gretchen, this is what transparency and accountability is all about, no? At ito na may alam ng lahat ng mga taong nasa gobyerno. Pati dito, not only the congressmen, but even all other public officials. I understand by ongoing inquiry na sa Senado. And we have an ongoing inquiry also headed by Congressman Terry Redon, no? So kung ano man ang maging findings nila doon sa investigation, because this is in aid of legislation, I hope they can pass and improve existing laws, no? And kung sino mang makita nila na merong mga pananagutan, I hope they will be willing to be accountable for whatever infractions which may be found by the investigations that are ongoing with respect to these flood control projects.
Okay. Bilang panghuli po, before we let you go, let's talk a little bit about impeachment. Do you think congressmen are still interested in pursuing the filing of another impeachment complaint come February? Ano po bang temperatura sa Kamara po ngayon?
I think because of our commitment to the mandate of accountability and transparency, ay hindi naman ito nawawala sa Congress, no? Sapagkat tayo naman po ay mga kinatawan lamang, representative ng ating mga constituents. And ang nasabi ko nga noon, this is not actually a personal discretion. This is a constitutional duty that we really have to take. So base sa magiging desisyon ng Korte Suprema sa ating motion for reconsideration, I wish to believe that the members of the House are still committed to push the impeachment process.
Tingin niyo ho ba makakakuha po kayo ng ganong kabilis na mga signatures o dahil nga po sa nakita po natin nangyari dito sa Senate, medyo tumagal, ano? I mean, na-delay. Do you think some members of the House are reconsidering or wavering, perhaps because of the political climate?
Perhaps that is possible. Some of them are reconsidering their decision, but Gretchen, 215 members of the House is a huge number, no? Most of them are still members of the 20th Congress. Mabawasan man ito, I think majority will still be standing to their decision during the filing of the first impeachment complaint.
But how do you think it should be done this time to avoid the same constitutional questions?
I adhere to the Constitution, no? Naniniwala ako na parehas legal ang proseso, the filing by 1/3 at least of the members of the House, which bypasses the proceeding before the Committee on Justice or the proceeding which requires a referral to the Committee on Justice. Kaya lang, ang nakikita ko lang dito, Gretchen, no? If the motion for reconsideration will be denied, there will be a need really to update the House of Representatives rules on impeachment pagdating sa second mode, which is the filing of at least 1/3. Kasi doon sa existing rules natin, which is almost or exactly the same as the provisions of the Constitution. Once the impeachment case is signed and verified by 1/3 at least of the members of the House, automatic itra-transmit na ito sa Senate, no? That is the provision in the House of Representatives rules on impeachment, which is actually a duplication almost of what is provided in the Constitution. Kaya po ito ang sinunod namin by the letter kami of the Constitution, no? Now, kung madi-deny ang ating MR because the Supreme Court incorporated in their decision the need to provide the impeached official the opportunity to file her counter affidavit, the need to attach all the available evidence in support of the impeachment, and the certain mandatory periods that is provided in the House to make sure that the members who are signing the impeachment complaint understood and read the contents of the impeachment complaint, then there will be need to update the rules of the House of Representatives on impeachment, no? Ulitin ko po, yung rules on impeachment existing in the House is almost a duplication of what is provided in our Constitution. Ang sinasabi po sa Constitution, once there is an impeachment complaint signed and verified by at least 1/3, it shall automatically be transmitted to the Senate, no? Then comes this decision of the Supreme Court. I think there are 7 items na idinagdag ng Supreme Court on how this impeachment complaint supported by one-third, should be transmitted to the Senate. So ito pong 7 items na ito, kung madi-deny ang MR, ay
Mhm.
kailangan din ma-incorporate sa existing rules on impeachment ng House of Representatives. But
Medyo
either way,
mahihirapan ho, ano?
kahit sa pagpapaliwanag ko, nahirapan ako. But either way, we have to consider that both modes are recognized clearly in the Philippine Constitution, no? Actually, the first, tatlo actually yan eh. It can be filed by a member of the House, no? Any or some member of the House. The second mode, any private citizen, but it should be endorsed by any member of the House. The
Mm.
third mode, it can be filed by at least one-third of the members of the House. Doon
Correct.
sa pangatlo, doon na iba ang proseso under our Constitution. Doon sa first two, kailangan dumaan sa Justice Committee. But in the third mode, diretso dapat ito sa Senate.
Oo. But you were you able to sign the affidavit? Kasi parang may ganun din po requirement ano, sa Constitution na dapat may nakapagpirma ang bawat
Yeah.
congressman sa isang
Yes,
affidavit
I am
certifying
one
na
of the
nabasa po nila.
215.
Oo.
Yeah.
Iba po
Yung
yun.
sinasabi mo, Gretchen, na nabasa, pinirmahan, naintindihan, inattest mo na ako ito, voluntary ang pagpirma ko, yun yung ibig sabihin ng verification. No?
Oho.
That is the contents of the verification.
So meron
And
po
that
nun.
is, meron. Meron.
Okay. Oo.
And ako personally, nagbasa ako at pumirma ako ng verification. Nanumpa ako sa section before I signed the verification. Actually, ando doon kami lahat, I think. No? Ewan ko kung sinong wala doon. Pero as far as I know, madami ang pumirma. Nagbasa ng sabay-sabay. Of course, iba pa ito doon sa kanya-kanyang basa at aral ng ating petisyon, no? So, but at the end of the day, Gretchen, let us always acknowledge, no, that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. So, kung ano man ang maging decision ng Supreme Court on our MR, definitely we will completely abide.
Alright, maraming salamat po sa inyong pagpapaliwanag ng mga pangyayari, the latest in the Congress when it comes to, of course, this motu proprio inquiry, the flood control projects, and as well as impeachment. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll
Thank you, Gretchen.
let
At
you
magandang
go
umaga po
to start your
sa
day.
lahat ng mga sumusubaybay ng Morning Matters.
Magandang umaga po. We have Batangas 2nd District Representative Gerville Luistro joining us today on Morning Matters.